The opening of the transfer portal is inching closer for NC State football to keep an eye on. Who are the top 5 players that they absolutely must retain?
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. Our Tuesday show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. As always, terms apply. Happy Tuesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, there's starting to be an increasing amount of buzz about the transfer portal. A couple more players from NC State have announced their intentions to hit the portal. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But I want to start here on Tuesday talking about the top 5 players that NC State must prioritize in retaining. We'll also put like a meter on, I guess like a worry meter, 1 to 10. How important is it that we do keep them here in Raleigh? I'm going to start here on the defensive side of the ball, and there is a slight caveat because they're both kind of up in the air in terms of what their eligibility status is left. Now, Sebastian Harsh and Kean Sloan, I'm going to combine them into one talking point. Sebastian Harsh, as I understand it, is going to be a redshirt senior this upcoming year, so he should be able to return to NC State. Kean Sloan, I believe, is in the process of appealing for another year of eligibility. He was a JUCO guy before he got to Utah State, was technically a grad transfer this season, but if a waiver does get passed, he can return. So Sebastian Harsh and Kean Sloan, how important is it that NC State can retain the two of them?
On the scale of 1 to 10, I'd say about a 7.5 to an 8. Because, Trey Thomas came on strong at the end of the season, but a good pass rushing rotation, unless you have 2 super freaks, the likes of Mesidor and Bain, you need multiple guys who can get it done. We saw it with Clemson this year in the fact that Helt and Parker were the only guys really producing at a high level on the edge there. That caused some problems. That caused some problems for that pass rush. And you see around the country, when you think about the teams that get home the best, there are multiple guys, they come at you from everywhere, especially those edge positions. So I think there's no way around the fact that you need good edges if you're going to play high-level competitive Power 4 football. Dave Doran said at the presser at the Gasparilla Bowl that, hey, we want to win an ACC championship. That's what we're looking at for next year. You don't accomplish that without either retaining these 2 or picking up 2 other game records off the edge.
Yeah, these 2, and especially in the very beginning of the season, they were arguably the 2 most impactful guys we had for maybe like all the way up to like the halfway point of the season. Then the DBs kind of got more involved later on. But Sebastian Harsh had 2.5 sacks. Kean Sloan had 1.5 sacks. Kean Sloan had the game-winning interception against UVA. That was a massive play at the time. Actually, still is now. You can't put enough emphasis on how important it is to bring both of these guys back. And if the cards don't fall in your favor and Kean Sloan can't get another waiver, then I guess so be it. But if you can get Sebastian Harsh back at the very minimum, you got to make that happen. These guys were game wreckers off the edge. And in fact, I think they can be possibly even more effective next year with a year in this system under their belt, and then potentially you go in the portal and add a couple more supplemental pieces. They might be even better potentially in 2026. So I'm with you. I'm at like a 7 out of 10. I think it's highly important that you can bring one or both of them back next year in 2026. Next one, we'll stick on the line, but we'll flip on the offensive side of the ball. Freshman offensive guard / center, Spike Souls. How important is it that NC State can bring him back in 26?
I'd say a 9. I'd say
it's up there.
He's vitally important because how special was this young man? It was clear even in the early games when there was a rotation, there shouldn't be much of a rotation. He's your guy. He's your guy at one of your guard spots. I don't care which one. He needs to be your starter somewhere. And he proved himself continually throughout the year. You give him another year or you give him a full year in Thunder's strength conditioning program. You give him another year in this offense. I think he'll be, the sky's the limit for Spike Souls. The sky is quite literally the limit. And I want to thank all those teams in SEC country for saying, oh, he's not tall enough. He's not this enough, he's not that enough. That young man kept receipts and said,
He
hey,
did.
yeah, whatever you thought I was, here's what I actually am. And so, I think it's vital to not only keep guys like that because of the actual fact that good big men are hard to find and big men lead this thing, but it's also an edge that he plays with, an attitude that he plays with. I can't remember what game it was. It was late in the season, and he kept going down. It looked like his shoulder was hanging off his body.
I think it's Florida State.
And he just keeps on ticking. He just keeps on coming back. That's the type of toughness I want to see from our offensive linemen, because that's what sets the tone and the tempo, where everybody else looks around and says, you know what, I'm hurting. But if his arm is almost in a different area code and they just jam that thing back in there and he's rolling, who am I to not go out here and perform my best? So I think it's of critical importance that we keep him.
Talking about keeping receipts, you could say there was receipts kept on a multitude of levels, not just some pesky fans within the state of Kentucky telling him that he wouldn't pan out at the college level. Well, he did. He was also a preseason freshman All-American, and now after the season has passed, he is a freshman All-American. So you talk about living up to the hype and then some. Offensive linemen like Spike, they do not grow on trees. And so for NC State, you have to value that as much as you possibly can. So I'm with you, Kenton. I'm at a 9. I think you can make an argument for possibly a 10 or a 9.5. It's way up on the priority list. You have to keep him here and continue his development, continue his growth. He has all of the makings of being an incredibly special player here at NC State. You have to keep him here so he can continue that. Yeah, I'm with you. Next, let's go with redshirt sophomore wide receiver Noah Rogers. Now, Noah was one of the most exciting pieces, especially later in this season. He had that hurdle in the bowl game. Still thinking about that virtually every single day. But we haven't quite, it feels like, at least to me, we haven't quite unlocked his full potential quite yet. Maybe some patience is still required based on what CJ Bailey might do, and we'll talk about him coming up here in just a second. What's your importance level on Noah Rogers going in 26?
I would say a 6 to a 6.5, because we have a very deep wide receiver room. We have a lot of talent in that room. Joker Phillips is doing a great job of developing those guys. And I would say we have enough to where if he leaves, it's not catastrophic. However, you want him with you as opposed to against you. You would be better with it. There are certain players, and this is with all due respect, in today's game, with the way the portal is set up and the way that they're moving roster pieces around, if you are not a net positive, it is addition by subtraction to get you going. And Noah Rogers, to me, is on the plus side of that, to where it's good to keep him here, but I wouldn't say break the bank and make it so that you can't afford much else after him based on what we've seen. He has shown the ability. He's shown the flashes. Once he puts it all together, it's a lot like where I think Hollywood Smothers was last year, where he just didn't get the opportunity, but when he did, he showed the flashes, and then we knew coming into this year, when he's the guy, there's going to be something special. Noah Rogers had a little bit more opportunity, but he's shown some amazing flashes. And so I want to see him come back, put it all together, be a first-team All-ACC kind of guy. I think he has that type of talent. But he just has to, again, bottle all of it up and give it play in and play out.
Noah's a little bit of a difficult one to try and gauge here, and in large part because of everything you just laid out. You've really only seen him in flashes, and some of those flashes have come based on like 2 targets a game, 3 targets a game. There really hasn't been many examples of him receiving, a high volume of opportunity there. But when you do see him in those flashes, he's hurdling a defender, making headlines on SportsCenter. The catch at the end of the 24 season against UNC, incredible catch still to this day. He has the raw talent that you really don't see many guys have. And so there's certainly a lot of value baked into that equation. But that opportunity, I think, is the biggest thing. It's like, well, if we do bring him back in 26, can he get 6, 7, 8 targets a game? Will he be the main feature of this offense? Potentially he could be. So I do think there's a lot of value here, but I also wouldn't exactly break the bank to try and keep him here either, because when you do factor in, I don't know, Terrell Anderson or Keenan Jackson, or maybe your freshman guys like Jarrell Boulder, who you haven't even seen yet, possibly Jonathan Paylor. Maybe when there's so many other mouths to feed, I don't know, you can afford to let good walk for potentially great, but that of course remains to be seen. I would love to keep Noah Rogers here, and so I hope there is going to be an emphasis placed on there. I'm going to go with 5 out of 10 for the time being right now. Let's take one step backward into the backfield. Duke Scott. Now we know that Hollywood has moved on by nature, RB1. What's your importance level on Duke Scott?
I would say a 7, because running back is a plentiful position. It's a position where, I mean, don't get me wrong, Duke Scott is fantastic, and he is a tone setter. He sets a tone of physicality with the way he runs the ball. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. However, the running back position is a very plentiful one. I give him that high of a grade because, again, I think that it's important to have players that set your culture, to have a guy that's going to be a bowling ball of butcher knives, and it's just like, hey, when you hit him, you're going to feel it. I think that's important. But I would say it's a situation where you really want to keep them. You really want to work it out, but you don't work it out at all costs. You know what I mean? You don't just say, blank check, brother, do your thing. I think that there's a limit on this thing, but I think that he's a fantastic player that, you want back. You want back. It's great to have him back. It will hurt to lose him, but I don't think the season is over. Drop it down the drain. There will be a massive ripple effect if he doesn't, type of deal.
I think for me, more so on like the sentimental side of things, I'm putting this at an 8 out of 10 because this is a homegrown type of thing. You found him in high school as a 3-star, so relatively low stock, and look at him now. He's moved up into RB1 position. Every single time you called upon him this year, he delivered. Whether that was the Georgia Tech game or the bowl game in spots in the other 10 games you played, he delivered every single time. And so there's a certain amount of physicality and speed combined in this guy that, again, you really don't find too many other places. And so I think in the homegrown nature of this and the production that he did give you, I'm seeing a very high importance, at least in my opinion, that I think that should be placed on Duke Scott going into the next season. So I have Duke at an 8 out of 10. And now the last one, the one I'm sure all of you have been waiting for, quarterback CJ Bailey. Kenton, where is your importance meter on the head man?
9 to 9.5 out of 10. The only reason I would say it's not a 10, because to me, a 10 is a guy that's racked up a ton of accolades, and if he leaves, there's a massive ripple effect. I think the massive ripple effect gets him to a 9. I think the fact that he was really good for us. When he was good, he was rolling. This offense was rolling. However, I'm not sure if I want to say blank check in a way that leaves us deficient in other areas on this team, because let's be very honest. Another part of what keeps me from saying a 10 here is what I've said before about the quarterback situation. It's best for all parties that he come back. You look at some of those quarterbacks that are in the portal right now, big time guys. They're going to snatch up that real big money. Those 4 to 5 guys are going to snatch up that real big money. And so then you're coming behind that saying, all right, now the next group is going to command excellent money. I think CJ is towards the top of that group. But the reality is, I don't think it serves him nor NC State well to have to go on a quarterback search and a team search going forward, because, like I said, I think there's a ripple effect if he doesn't come back, unless you land another really high-quality quarterback. So I'd say 9 to 9.5 out of 10.
I'm at a 9.5. I think this by far is the most important piece of retention that NC State could possibly look for, because, and Kenton mentioned this, the ripple effect is where my worry goes. If CJ is to leave, I think you might be looking at potentially like a complete factory reset on the offensive side of the ball. If he goes, maybe you lose 75% of your wide receivers. Maybe you lose some offensive linemen. Maybe you lose Duke Scott in the process. Maybe you lose people on the defensive side of the ball because of how big of a worry that is. I don't know about that, but I think CJ should be the number one priority for NC State. And I think CJ should absolutely be looking to come back if the value is right for him as well. NC State and CJ Bailey, the marriage there, that is the best case scenario, because if CJ is looking elsewhere for more money or more opportunity, whatever that may be, for him to risk a jump where he hopes to be immediate quarterback one and then fit into that system, and then everything else works around him symbiotically as well, it is a risk. Whereas now you have the keys to the kingdom. You already have a good idea of what they might bring back around you, possibly make some portal additions as well. I think you got it pretty good right here, especially, again, if that value does come in to be what you think it should be. So I think a lot of this offseason is very much tethered to what CJ Bailey does or does not do. So I think that is by far the most important thing to be watching out for. That portal will open on January 2nd. It is a 15-day window from the 2nd to the 16th. So decisions are going to have to be made, and they're coming in these next couple weeks. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit more about the guys that have already left NC State, or at least their name is going in the portal here when that thing does open. We'll talk more about that after a quick word from our sponsors. Our first Tuesday sponsor is Gametime. There's simply nothing like college football and college basketball. The tailgates, the packed stadiums, and being right in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments that we all remember forever. But actually getting tickets, well, sometimes that's a confusing part. There's long queues, logins to remember, and prices jumping off at checkout. But that is why Gametime gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football and college basketball tickets and experiences in just a number of taps. All you'll have to do is open up the Gametime app, look at the upcoming games, swipe, tap, ticket, go, just like that. It's quite literally that simple. The app is super incredibly easy to use. You can go from browsing to buying in just simply minutes. You'll also love the panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect upon arrival. For the remainder of the college football season and getting into basketball season, take all of the guesswork out of getting your tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms always apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Gametime app today. Middle portion of our Tuesday show. Now let's spend a couple minutes talking about the guys that have already announced their plans to enter the portal once that does open on January the 2nd. So far, we have a number of players that are mostly depth pieces. And then, of course, you do have Hollywood Smothers, who we've already spoken about. But you have offensive lineman Val Erickson, defensive end Josh Alexander Felton, defensive tackle Justin Terrell, wide receivers Tank Boston and Christian Zachary, linebacker Elijah Groves, put a pin in that one, and then redshirt sophomore safety Damon Fagan. So going back to Val Erickson on the offensive line, I think there was some promise when he was entering NC State coming over from Missouri. Couldn't really quite put it together to see a significant snap. So, it hurts to see some offensive line depth go, but that's what the portal's for. You can replace what you lose. Josh Alexander Felton, who did see some time this year. Unfortunately, the only reason I remember his name is because of the offsides on the punt against Duke, and that cost us in a major way. The wide receivers, here's a stopping point here for you, Kenton. The wide receivers of Tank Boston and Christian Zachary moving on. Might that signify that you're keeping who you want to keep in that wide receiver room?
At the end of the day, I look at what we're losing in the wide receiver room and in general right now. If you're talking about one guy who played meaningful snaps and did a ton for this team being gone, like I just talked about, if you're not producing in today's portal world, it's just, and this is not any disrespect to those young men. The reality is, because I can say, if my career had played out at NC State exactly how it did, it would have made, back then it would have made a lot of sense for me to get in the portal because I spent more time in the cold tub than on the field. That's just the reality, right? How hard I tried, how much film I watched, all that doesn't matter. The end goal of production, the end goal of we're in a results-based business. The results were not there. So it's not disrespect to these young men because some of them could go on and do great things, right? We saw Anthony Smith go on and be really good at ECU. I just look at it and I say the pieces that we've lost so far, other than Hollywood, it's like, I'm not going to lose a ton of sleep about it. And even with Hollywood, I wasn't expecting him to be on next year's roster anyway, and I'm sure the coaches weren't either.
We've already spoken at great lengths about Hollywood Smothers. As much as we hate to see him go, the majority of us, we didn't really think he'd be back next season anyway. Let's take that pin back out about Elijah Groves. Now, a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, have asked us what our thoughts are on Elijah Groves, not just recently, but if you go back 2 summers ago, Tony Gibson on ACC Network talked about Elijah Groves saying, this guy's a monster. I can't wait to see him develop. Well, we might really have something here when it's all said and done. And then that was, I think, the last time we ever really heard anything about him, at least publicly. So Elijah Groves does not get on the field for NC State. And to be honest, I don't think he was ever in the depth chart or the 2 deep as well. So, Kenton, your thoughts on losing a highly talented Elijah Groves, but never seeing him on the field?
There's a lot of things that you hear about different guys and all that. And all I'll say about the Elijah Groves situation is I hope that he can be an impactful football player. I hope that he can maximize and tap into that potential, even if it's not at NC State. I really and truly hope that for that young man because he's got a ton of talent. I think that's apparent. I don't think anybody is going to sit up here and debate that. But whenever a guy that talented is not on the field, there's a reason. And so I hope that those reasons get cleaned up and that he's able to make a meaningful difference in his next program. It just didn't shake out. It wasn't in the cards for him at NC State.
I think you said that extremely well. A kid that has as much raw talent as he does, as highly touted as he was when he came to NC State. Everyone was excited about him, from Doran down to Tony Gibson. You hope that he can make the most of that, at least somewhere, to maximize all that potential on the football field. And so, again, for one reason or another, it didn't work out at NC State, but we wish him the best, and hopefully he can flourish at his next stop. Now, the last piece to discuss, to kind of put a bow on this, the only meaningful contributor that you lose is Hollywood Smothers. What are your thoughts on that so far?
I mean, I'm excited about that. That's ultimately, what more could you ask for out of the portal? Because you're going to get some meaningful contributors for next year. I have no doubt about that. I think there are going to be some meaningful contributors that you pick up. If you only lose one, your team got a lot better. Your team netted very positively. So ultimately, I'm excited to see that we haven't had a mass exodus of any kind, because I believe the average team turnover now is 30 to 40%. And
roughly,
we're not even close to that. So I would say that fires me up.
Now, again, there is a lot of time between right now and January the 16th. They just have to enter their name between now and then. But it is encouraging, at least to me so far, that you've gone through bowl practice, you've played your bowl game, and now 5-6 days have crossed, and you still really have only lost Hollywood Smothers in the grand scheme of things. But that is the point where I was talking about CJ Bailey. I think a lot is going to be tethered to him. If he goes, it might be a free-for-all at that point. But if he stays, you might keep on a lot of key pieces like the offensive skill talent. And again, possibly some guys on defense that want to stick around for a team that might end up being pretty good next year in 2026. So certainly going to keep our eyes, ears, and nose to the ground over the course of the next couple weeks when that portal does open. But I think if you're NC State, so far, so good. But you have a long way to go. You have to get these guys back on board for 2026. And I have to imagine it will indeed start with quarterback CJ Bailey. So any more updates that do come across our desk, we'll be happy to talk about them when the time comes. But so far, so good, at least I would say, as you inch closer to that portal opening. Now, coming up next, switching over to the hard court, let's give a quick update on Deron Rippey, the #1 point guard for the 2026 class. NC State's been heavily involved with his recruitment. Where does NC State now stand before he makes his commitment on December the 30th? More on that after a quick word from our sponsors. Our second Tuesday sponsor is FanDuel. NFL Sundays, they typically move fast. There's one big play and suddenly everything feels different. But that's what makes live betting with FanDuel that much more exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, and every highlight moment. Live betting is at its best when the game begins to shift. A wide receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, the momentum will flip after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the action at that exact moment. There's live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. There's player props that update as guys heat up, and you can bet the next touchdown score, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action for the remainder of the NFL season, head on over to FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, but so can you. Last couple minutes of our Tuesday show, switching on to the hard court. A couple weeks ago, we talked about Deron Rippey Jr. He's the #1 point guard in the 2026 class. He did visit NC State. By all accounts, it went pretty well. Andrew Slater has known the Rippey family for quite some time. They're both from the New York area. So Will Wade is after the top point guard in the country. There's something to be said for that, especially being only the couple months into season #1 at NC State. But that's the last update we gave you. Since then, I believe Duke has increased their stock in this sweepstakes. And as it stands now, his recruitment decision will be 1 week away. He's announcing on December the 30th. And as I understand this, I've been told some things, I've read some things. This is the conclusion I've come to. It's a 3-horse race. It's between Duke, NC State, and the Tennessee Volunteers. Now, if you zoom in a little further, based on, again, some things I've heard behind the bushes, I think it's really down to Duke and NC State. And so I want to roll back to the spring when NC State and Will Wade were involved with some high-level recruitments and the money figures are flying left and right. Why is this guy interested in NC State? Wait, where'd he go? I thought we had him. There was some mysteriousness behind the scenes. And what became increasingly apparent is that NC State and Will Wade and Andrew Slater, they have a blueprint. And if anyone tries to push them off of that blueprint, they will not budge. So I believe that if this does come down to an arms race in terms of the cheddar, NIL, if you're NC State and you're Will Wade, would you rather have one Deron Rippey or maybe like 2 or 3 Quadir Copelands if you're picking up what I'm putting down?
Yeah, at the end of the day, let this recruiting stuff play out how it does, right? Everybody thinks they know, and everybody knows, oh, this is going to happen this way, that's going to happen that way. Let it play out. And ultimately, we know that NC State has always been the school of almost for top players. Yeah. But I would say let Will Wade cook. Just let him cook. If we're in year 2, 3, and we're still looking at, all right, now we're struggling to pull in 5-star, it's just not happening, then I would say this is a problem. But if we don't win the Rippey sweepstakes, that's okay. We'll have plenty of others to get done here. So I would say all in all, I look at this and I say I'm a trust Wade. I'm a trust Wade either way on this thing because he's given me no reason to not trust him on the recruiting trail so far.
I would look at this almost like a progress marker as well. You're in contention for the top point guard in the country, and Will Wade has only been here for 9 months. Okay, so if you do miss out on Deron Rippey, or maybe you land him and you have the number 1 point guard of the 2026 class, think about how far you've leveled up as a program, again, in just that 9 months. That's crazy. Not to denigrate Keats or Gottfried or Sidney Lowe or anybody else in the last 20, 25 years. It's never been this high, this fast, and hopefully Will Wade can keep it on that consistent plane. We knew that Will Wade would come in and recruit hard, and adding Andrew Slater to the staff, it creates a whole nother layer to this thing. But to be in contention for players of this caliber this fast, it's only a matter of time before you do start hitting on 1 or 2 or 3. And then all of a sudden you have one of the top 10 classes in the country. Will Wade is more than capable of that type of thing. In fact, I told you it won't be long before Will Wade lands the top class in NC State history. Like, I would bet just about anything that's going to happen. Maybe not this year, but next year, 2 years, 3 years, I would expect it. So Deron Rippey will be announcing his commitment on December the 30th. In my opinion, I think it's a 3-horse race, Duke, NC State, and Tennessee. Who knows? If the cards do fall and there's red and white on them, might be time for celebration. That will do it for us here on Tuesday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box, mash that subscribe button if you have not already. Give us your thoughts on the top 5 to 6 players that NC State should make an effort to retain heading into the 2026 season. Tell us your thoughts on the players that have already announced their decision to leave NC State into the portal when that opens. And lastly, Deron Rippey, give us your gut feeling on where he will commit in just under 1 week's time. Be sure to mash that subscribe button if you have not already. We will see you all soon. Date undefined with Christmas and Christmas Eve coming up, but you will see us soon. But until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.